consciousness is the starting point of reality.
Completely antithetical to that attitude in science.
What is reality?
We're now at this great inflection.
Video games and all of that is actually the most important spiritual tools we've got today.
The whole point of a virtual reality is to have useful fiction of causality.
The individual never gets enlightened. It's the enlightenment that becomes the individual.
Space-time is doomed.
Consciousness is fundamental.
Einstein's theory actually predicts its own demise.
Balance is not the ability to stand up, it's the ability to rise up.
Please like, comment, and subscribe.
What's interesting is that in the development of humanity, the exploration of our potentials as humans, right? The spiritual traditions have, for example, really developed the tool of meditation and going into silence. And that turns out to be an extremely powerful tool for exploring our own consciousness, exploring what consciousness is, for being prepared to move to new levels. And it's only been in the last 400 years that humanity has developed this other tool, which is the mathematically precise theories. And it's, who knows how many other tools we'll discover.
Exactly.
Right? That's the interesting thing. I'm not saying that we're done, but what's interesting about these tools at first seem to be contradiction, because in the case of meditation, where you go into silence, you're letting go of any structures. You're purposefully letting go of any thoughts whatsoever.
But the thing is, if we're going to inject something there, basically what's happening is that you stop projecting. And so you're not truly letting go of structure, you're actually moving into them. Because when you stop projecting, then you can move through that barrier into the vertical, and that's where the true structures and the true mathematics are. And this is why you get those huge kind of insights and realizations, because you're then connected to the mathematics.
Right. So that's right. So the silence is a letting go of the known, and that opens up the possibility of confronting a deeper unknown,
Yes.
which is, again, the terrifying and exhilarating aspect of it. And so that's a really powerful tool. But in the process, you're not consciously computing stuff, right? You're not trying to look at a Lagrangian and look at the solutions or anything. You're letting all that go, and somehow we're moving to a new conceptual system by not engaging with the current one.
Yes.
But
again, if I may inject something there, what you're describing is the experience from the horizontal going into the vertical. Now,
right.
In reality, your ability to analyze is amplified. Your ability to relate to the mathematics of life increases. So it's basically, yes, you let go of the horizontal, limited way of thinking and processing, while in the vertical you can process even more. But because it's on a higher level, it's a different way of processing. And
right.
So you cannot have those realizations without processing information. It's just a different way. So you let go of the biological human way of processing, and you go into more of the kind of universal part of yourself. So right. You actually analyze even more, you process even more, but from the human mind perspective, that does not really relate to or understand how that processing happens, what is really going on. So we can feel that, I'm just dissolved into everything, and then all of a sudden you have these enormous insights, which is the result of analyzation, but because it's then kind of defractalized, it's on a different level. The human mind cannot connect to it, but the human mind can be trained. And this is also what I find interesting. And this is to me, that's a sport. I'm trying to train people into convert the kind of vertical process into the horizontal. And you have to retrain the brain, and you have to basically also get dedicated brain cells to do this. So you have to stimulate the brain and the mind to kind of assist the brain into becoming more of a vehicle for vertical signals. And that can totally happen. And then the kind of barrier between these two realities will start to dissolve more. And then also in the horizontal self and reality, you will be able to understand and relate to the process that happens in the vertical. And you can then go into the vertical and think, but not think based on the horizontal way. You think in the vertical way, but you can train the physical brain into understanding and kind of converting that process. So this is to me also the next step, that instead of just going into meditation and letting yourself be dissolved and disconnect, understand that it's the opposite. You are going into a greater context, which enables your mind to be in this enormous, kind of expanded state. And that enables you to process so much more information. And then you can bring it back. But you have to kind of learn how to do that, because the human brain does not do that voluntarily.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a very important clarification. Absolutely. And in some sense, it's a good metaphor here may also be metamorphosis. The letting go that happened, the horizontal, as you pointed out, the horizontal feeling of letting go is pretty much maybe like the caterpillar's feeling of the letting go that happens in metamorphosis. It's like everything that I know is being destroyed. I'm turning into a puddle of chemicals. My legs are dissolving. My mouth is dissolving. I'm dissolving. This is all death and destruction. This is horrific.
Right.
And the immune cells of the caterpillar fight this. They literally fight the transformation. But eventually there's a reassembly into something that can actually fly. That's not just crawling around on green leaves, but it's flying and doing something that's inconceivable from the point of view of the caterpillar. And so it's both. That's the interesting aspect of it. It's from the, as you say, the horizontal perspective, it's one thing, but from this vertical perspective, it's a metamorphosis into something that is going to be even more powerful. And I think that one thing that the tools of science bring to us is that at the horizontal level, they help us to explore that horizontal level very, very carefully and really understand what this conceptual system means at the horizontal level. And so it's very, very powerful. It's incredibly powerful. That's all of our modern, we're talking today because of that incredible power of the technology that comes out of that science. So it has proven power, but at the horizontal level, but also it has this transformational power to help us move vertically, because for a couple reasons. One reason is, as we're seeing right now in physics, it's the tools of our scientific theories of physics, Einstein's gravity and quantum field theory, that are telling us that there's a limit to this conceptual system, that space-time is not fundamental. It's the really understanding the conceptual system horizontally very, very well that is forcing the scientists to wake up to the idea that there is a deeper conceptual system that is now required. And so my guess is that this will happen at every level, that as we inhabit a new level and then use the tools of precise thinking and mathematical modeling to understand, okay, here's this, now I'm a butterfly, I've got new tools. Right. Now let me understand what these tools are. Yes. And then I'll see the limits of those tools, and they'll then be pointers to, okay, the next conceptual transformation that's needed. And this perhaps will be a never ending process. And so, but as you said, meditation does the same thing. At the horizontal level, it feels like it's just a letting go and a negative thing, but really viewed more holistically, it's a movement up
Yes.
Vertically, and the tools of science may seem like they're only an exploration right now of our current conceptual framework, but they're also the lever, the cognitive lever
Yeah.
that points us
Yep.
to a higher dimension and gives us hints, the cookie crumbs, as you say, but the hints about where the new breakthroughs in conceptual structure may come. And so I see science, the meditation tools of spirituality, the theory, mathematics, experiment tools of science, and who knows what new tools may the next level may actually open us up. I mean, we've only had the tools of science for the last 400 years. We've had meditation for thousands of years and the spiritual tools. Now we've got the tools of science. Who knows what new tools are going to come as we open up and get new conceptual systems. And so I would love to see what may come on that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that because, of course, with also what's going on with quantum computing and all of that, it's like at some point one will be able to understand at least the horizontal consciousness and how to open it up. And I'm absolutely sure that one will have more effective ways of connecting to vertical consciousness than meditation.
Right.
But just as mentioned, the kind of metamorphosis is so important because it's the kind of reincarnation. I talk about this as the missing link in traditional spirituality because it focuses first of all on transcendence, which is to me the first step. That's going into the vertical. And I've explained this, that the focus in traditional spirituality comes from having to numb pain. Life was extremely tough. So one could, live with oneself through the fantasies that life will be better when we die. Meditation was a way to escape, human suffering. If you look at Buddha, that was basically, the whole foundation was how to get out of suffering. So it's about like moving out, how to escape. So that was the only goal. And we need to include the incarnation part. And that's the interesting thing. The easy part to me is the transcendence. That's letting go, that's opening up. But then you have to, go into these realizations. You have to understand. And the only way you can prove that you have understood is to bring it back down, transform everything and make it work. Because as we have talked about, once consciousness has really changed, the projection will have to change accordingly. Mm-hmm. And this is really what spiritual work is about. Many people think it's about just letting go and, transcending, but that's the easy part. It's then figuring out how can I incarnate this? Because you have to then reinvent, and it's going back with all these plates on the bamboo sticks and, figure out how to do it. And that's absolutely necessary. And to me, this is why science and spirituality has not been compatible, because science focuses on how, do things work and why. And when you have a focus in spirituality, it's just like, I want to get out of here. You're not interested in really learning, how things come into being and how things work. You just want to get away. So it's that focus on transcendence that has been a huge blockage and misunderstanding. You have to incarnate it, and that transforms and changes everything. And it's only when you have been able to let everything change and change your entire projection, change the very space-time you live in, that's when one can see that there is a true alignment between that vertical consciousness and the horizontal projection. So this is one of the more kind of fundamental principles of what I'm teaching spiritually. It's pointing out this is the huge missing link in spiritual traditions. And we have to now collectively focus on that part and see that this is why many people of spirit, they're completely useless. They're not been contributing to life because their only goal has been to get away. And now we have to try to incarnate that consciousness. And to me, that's also develop the language, understand how to bring this into the horizontal and be able to communicate it in the way that produces these cookie crumbs that other people can use. And if not, it's self-serving. If we're not bringing it back, it's just like the great explorers. They were also scientists. They didn't go on vacation. It was not just about them. They brought back the information to lift humanity. And this is, I think, I talk a lot about this, that if you as an individual identify as someone in a higher level of consciousness, you have an obligation to bring useful information back. You have to learn how to incarnate your insights, your realizations, so that people and people of science can use whatever it is that you have learned to lift humanity. If you're not doing that, it's all about you. And then, as we know in spiritual traditions, it's still a trap of the ego. So I'd say the transcendence is still a process of the ego because it's about you escaping your own suffering. That is self-serving, and it's still based on your own resistance. As I've explained, resistance and suffering is the same thing. Suffering is the thought it should have been different. And that comes from your own resistance to what already is. It's showing your inability to be in harmony with the level of manifestation you are already exposed to. It's basically you can't balance the few plates that you have going and you want even more. That is not a solution. You have to be able to make it work for real. And to me, again, this is how someone of a high level of consciousness can prove that they're actually in a high level of consciousness. You have to be the explorer, going places where no one has gone before. Well, bring back the information to lift humanity, and do not make it about yourself. I think this is also a great shift that we're seeing, that, as I said, more people of spirit are getting interested in science and see that we have to work together in order to lift humanity, in order to also expand the collective awareness. And just like in science, we can never make it about ourselves. You know, when we are in a high level of consciousness, it comes with an obligation. You have to see yourself as the explorer, you know, going to new places, new frontiers, but it's not about you. You still represent the collective consciousness of the whole. And that shift, focusing on the incarnation part, that transformation of yourself, your own life, and the people around you, and try to digest the information in such a way that other people can use it. It's important. I think it's more important than ever. And you know, this is what I'm trying to do with my work. I spend all my time when I'm not teaching trying to break down you know, spiritual principles and information of kind of high consciousness, like how can we break this down into something that can be understood in a more horizontal consciousness, in order to lift it. And I think that process is like fundamental for a functioning high level of consciousness. And then it's also a matter of then trying to do that job like we're doing right now, the two of us, like having these types of conversations where we can learn from each other and hopefully inspire other people as well.
Right. No, I agree that the exploration is the key, and the openness to exploration is the key, both horizontally and vertically. In the case of the sciences, 300 or 400 years ago, right, they decided to take space-time as fundamental, and so they started to explore what do we mean by space-time, right? And so we can start with like writing down the mathematics of Euclidean geometry. So Newton was a Euclidean notion of the geometry of space and time, and we worked with that for a couple hundred years and explored it and pushed it. We thought, you know, that was the point of it was we're saying space and time are fundamental. we're trying to understand exactly what we're saying. Right? When we say that, what do we really mean? Well, do we mean Euclidean geometry? Does that work? And it seemed to work for a couple centuries. And then we start getting these problems. The Michelson-Morley experiments, where the speed of light didn't seem to do what we thought it should do, and something called black body radiation, where the radiation of bodies didn't seem to do what we were supposed to do. And it turned out we needed to then go back to the very notion of space and time, and we had to let go of Euclidean geometry. So now with Einstein we went to this a different kind of geometry that's required. And in fact, we have spaces of time as an opposite signature from the spatial dimensions, and we have a four-dimensional space-time. It's in some sense Euclidean, in the sense that it's when we go to general relativity, it's no longer no way it's Euclidean. It's actually a curved space-time. So it's a non-Euclidean space-time. So what we find is we explore by taking our current concepts, like they start off with just words, space and time. They're just words. What do we mean by space and time? What do we mean by mass? What do we mean by objects? And we say, well, I don't know, but let's try this. And we put some math to it, and we see how it works. So now my point is saying that's what we did in science, is to say we now need, in the spiritual side, the same kind of exploration. So here, now that the concepts are, we're not taking space and time as fundamental, we're taking conscious experiences. Conscious experiences, for example, are now fundamental. Or among the concepts that will be fundamental. So what precisely do we mean by a conscious experience? What does it mean to have a conscious experience? We need to do exactly what the physicists did, because there's an intuitive notion. Of course, everybody knows what space is. Look around, that's space. And you can say the same thing about, of course, everybody knows what experience is. You're having them right now. You're hearing my voice. You're having an experience. What more is there to say? There's a lot more to say. We haven't even started. Let's try to be precise about experiences, and what is the relationship that we have with experiences. Are we infallible about experiences? Do we have what you might call direct acquaintance with experiences, or is it an indirect understanding of? So what is the relationship between what I call myself and what is myself? What is that? Again, I say, well, I know what myself is. You got a self, I got a self. What could be more obvious than a self? It's not obvious at all until we put some math to it. We don't know what a self is. We don't know what it means for a self to have an experience. What is that relationship of a self to an experience? What is the relationship of a self to a set of concepts, a conceptual system that we were talking about that could be horizontal or vertical? What is that relationship? Until we actually do the hard work of saying, we go past the point where we go, of course you know what we're talking about. No, we don't. We think we know what we're talking about, but what we've learned is, if you think that you know what you're talking about, well, then state it precisely. Try to do it. Yeah. And then you'll find you don't know what you're talking about, and all of a sudden, all the mysteries are right there. And so moving from the physicalism of the scientists to the new language of the spiritual traditions is going to require that we do exactly for those spiritual concepts that science did for space-time and objects in space-time. We're going to have to make them precise. And what we'll discover is we didn't know nearly as much about the spiritual concepts as we thought we did. In fact, we didn't know anything, and everything is there to learn ahead. And one thing may come out of it is that once we start to make those concepts precise of self and conscious experiences and ego and so forth, we may realize that at some point, all those concepts that we took as primitive in the spiritual realm were just a baby beginning. There's a whole new set of concepts that the math is pointing us to. They're saying what we took as the foundations of spirituality, that was way too limiting. Now there's this whole new language just like the physicists are letting go of space-time. Physics was about what happens in space-time. Now, what is physics? Well, I don't know what physics is anymore. I'm hoping that the same thing will happen in spirituality,
Yes.
that we will be so precise in spirituality that we realize, well, we thought spirituality was that, but it can't be that. So now, what is spirituality? When we get to the point where we go, I don't know what spirituality is. I thought I knew, but the very predicates that I thought were the foundation are being blown away by the very theories of those predicates. That's when we're going to be ready for the next. So who knows how many centuries that will take? It took 4 centuries of hard science to blow past space-time. And so, how many centuries will it take for us to really inhabit the spiritual ideas that we have right now, make them precise, reach the limits of those ideas, and then get ready for what Piaget calls the accommodation move, where we now have to move to a brand new conceptual. And this is the process that will continue forever. This is, so it's not a little tiny tweak we're talking about here. We're talking about a grand change, and these grand changes will never end. And so that's the ride. It's not a small.
I think the beauty of this, in many ways, is that spirituality cannot really go further without science.
Yeah.
And in many ways, science cannot go further without spirituality.
Right.
So I think it's and that in itself is difficult for many people. I think many people kind of subscribing to the spiritual approach, they often see science as something difficult and worldly and unnecessary. And I think also, in the world of science, one will see a spirituality as a fluffy nonsense. And
Right.
it's then, peeling away all of that and understanding that it's simply about exploring what is. And as is it, like we need a whole new level of precision in spirituality, and in a way eliminate the word spirituality. It's like come to this kind of mutual understanding of what it is we're doing. And I think what we often refer to as a spirituality is more of a subjective experience that we can have that is far beyond the current definitions and tools in science. So, but when it's basically exploring and experiencing the same reality, but filter through an individual consciousness and experience, you can then come to different understandings and different realizations than you can through current science. Spirituality will always be ahead of science because you need the consciousness first, and then you're able to think. So the exciting thing for me when it comes to the world of science is how that community will approach consciousness, and understanding that intelligence can only get you so far. You need an expansion of vertical awareness in order to also expand your intelligence. And also for people in the world of spirit to see that, we need the discipline and structure and the precision and the mathematics of science in order to figure out, is this real? Is this working? Because science is getting to a level very soon where one will be able to figure out just that. And to me, that's exciting. I want everything to be kind of not necessarily proven wrong, but I want to go beyond all these limitations and definitions, and it's fun. It's not a threat. It's and as many people have pointed out, when you look at all the different religions and gods throughout human history, several thousand gods. Once a religion goes out of style, it never comes back, and there's a reason for it. When it comes to mathematics, as like it doesn't matter. Like if we were to obliterate the entire human culture, if we started from scratch again, humans would still figure out mathematics in the same way. But when it comes to religion, they would never come up with the same concept. So basically, we have to peel away all of that belief fluff and start using our consciousness to explore what is, instead of using that exploration to find definitions and stories and narratives to make ourselves feel better. We need to learn from science. And again, I will just repeat that I think spirituality cannot go any further without the assistance of science and without that communication.
I agree, and I think that's a great place for us to stop. I mean, I do have to take off myself right now, but I think that you've summarized, I think, a really good takeaway from our discussion today, that science and spirituality must cooperate, that the insights of the spiritual traditions, coupled with the insights and tools of science, will allow us to push both forward and humanity forward in ways that we don't know, and that's the glory. We don't know, and we have to let go of our dogmatic assumptions about how it's going to turn out. We just, who would have ever guessed that we'd be talking? I mean, I'm in California. You're halfway around. You're on the other side of the world from me. We're talking. Our explorations made that possible. Who knows? When we let go of our dogmatism and we just open up to what's next, what new experiences will happen. Maybe we'll be talking across Alpha Centauri directly. Who knows?
Sooner or later. Yeah, I think what you're saying is it's just, this is to me the starting point. This is where we are at, and this is what I would like to also, to inspire people to do, is try to kind of bridge these different kind of sets of understanding and see they're not really different. They're just different approaches trying to observe the same thing. And we need to be playful, as they like, leave all the dogmas. We need to play, we need to have fun, and magical things will happen, to use a very scientific expression. But I think we can really go into this whole new type of both experience and exploration when we utilize both these kind of halves that kind of represent the full narrative of the human journey.
Very good.
And once we're able to make it work together, I think that's when we will get to a point of real expansion of both consciousness and science.
I couldn't agree more. Okay.
See ya.
Take
Bye.